Thanks very much. Okay, so just getting started. Thanks everyone for coming along. I know this is a particularly busy time in the arts, this kind of mid-year coming up to June time, so great to have you along. I'm also pleased to introduce my co-presenter, Square, who, as well as being a respected web consultant and developer in the arts, is technical advisor for the Optimizer benchmarking project, which is our exciting pilot project that many of you are involved in. So some of you may have met or spoken to him already in person or virtually, I'm sure. So Square is joining me to talk through some of the options for delivering a mobile experience to your audiences, something that's a difficult area for many organisations I work with to sort of work their way through. So he's got some great insights today. So we are going to be covering this Square and me. We're going to be covering 4 key areas today in the webinar. The first section is going to talk about the trends in mobile access that are happening, quite extraordinary things are happening and how they are impacting us in the arts. And the second part of that is how we deliver a mobile experience to our audiences and potential audiences. The second section is going to be around understanding your mobile audience. So you all already, particularly if you've got Google Analytics and Facebook Insights, have some really interesting data at your fingertips to find out who's currently coming to your website via mobile. So I'm going to take you through some of those reports so you can go back afterwards and delve into them. And then a few tips around planning your mobile strategy and how to get started. So what do we mean when we talk about mobile? I'm referring to mobile devices that connect to the internet in some way. So it's cell phones, smartphones, which are phones with additional functionality that you would typically find on a computer, and also tablets such as iPads. That's the most common tablet. These are computers that are contained in a single panel. And the advent and explosion of these devices over the last couple of years has completely changed how people engage with the web, and therefore it's changing how they engage with us as arts organisations. And it's really been revolutionary in the last couple of years. The growth in penetration, purchase and usage of mobile devices in the last 12 months can only really be described as phenomenal. So let me for a moment take you on a short journey of astounding facts about mobile. So you can see from this graph how smartphone penetration has grown in the last year or so in the United States. That you only have to look at that graph to see what's going on. In the last quarter of last year, the annual global shipments of smartphones exceeded those of client PCs for the first time. And what that means is that your audiences are just as likely to be looking at your digital channels on a smartphone as they are on a PC or a laptop. 1 in 2 mobile subscribers now has a smartphone, so they're not just using cell phones, they're using smartphones now, and that figure is moving steadily upwards. In terms of tablet computers, this iPad statistic really sort of says what's going on. It took 5 years to sell 22 million iPods, 3 years to sell the same number of iPhones, and in less than 2 years since its release, over 55 million iPads have sold. It's probably the biggest change in the last 12 months in terms of how we engage digitally with our audiences. Another supporting fact from the UK, 3 years ago no one owned a tablet. In 2012, over 12% of the UK population have one. And in New Zealand, the Australian and New Zealand tablet market doubled in the second quarter of last year. This means that we are connected to our audiences all the time. This is an alarming fact that 78.8% of US smartphone and tablet owners not only took their devices with them, but use them all the time while on vacation. So it used to be someone would go on vacation, we would have to hold their mail for 3 weeks and things. Now they're in touch with us all the time. That means they can also talk about us whenever they want as well. We don't often think about email being impacted by mobile, but mobile email will account for 10 to 35% of email opens depending on your target audience. So it is as likely that our audiences will be reading our email marketing on their smartphone or their iPad as it is that they're looking at it at a computer. So if we're not optimized for email, that's a problem. Sorry, for mobile with email, that's a problem. People are watching video on mobile phones. The video is the content of the future. More and more content on the web will be video, and now it's pretty easy to watch it on a mobile phone. It's not as expensive as it used to be with data and things, so there you go. And also, you know, smartphone owners are accessing social networking and blog destinations via mobile. These figures are extraordinary. The number of smartphone owners in the US accessing social networking and blog destinations via mobile increased by 77% between December 2010 and December 2011, and European figures were similar. So, you know, we often think, sometimes when we think about mobile optimization, we're thinking about our website, but they're accessing all of our channels via mobile. How the use of tablets is different to the use of smartphones, and so people are spending more time on their iPads and other tablets. They spend an average of 90 minutes on them per day, and they're spending more. So iPad users are spending more than smartphone users when they're shopping online. And, you know, it's fairly obvious that it's a more relaxed experience. You sit on the sofa, you open up your iPad, and you can, you know, it's a much better experience than the phone. I talked in the first webinar a lot about the audience journey, and if we think about the audience journey in a sort of digital context, this is a really interesting observation that consumers are weaving the use of phones, tablets, and their desktop PCs into their purchase process. So the journey kind of goes across a number of different channels and devices. I had to include this one. 65% of people admitted to texting while walking. So there's just, you know, no getting away from our audiences, really. And so the New Zealand stats, there's high penetration now of use of mobile internet in New Zealand. This is interesting. This is a global statistic, but we are in the sort of second batch of countries. We now have more than 40% smartphone penetration. That's pretty high. And 71% of New Zealanders in the first quarter of this year sent or read email on a smartphone, and 63% of them access a social network on a smartphone. Online advertising through mobile is, the spend in online advertising through mobile is going to leap. And this, if you overlay this on the recent data that's just come out this week from Creative New Zealand, New Zealand in the Arts, New Zealanders in the Arts research, it kind of ties in with the number of New Zealanders who are watching performances in art online and then turning that into a visit. So because mobile devices are making that so much easier for them. As you know, we've been delving into data for the Optimizer benchmarking project, and some of the first data we've gone into is mobile, and it's really interesting to see in terms of the percentage of website visits from a mobile device. It's increased on average from 3.19% in April 2011 to 10.40% in April 2012. So you can see the jump amongst our own sector in terms of the number of mobile devices being used to access websites. And the recent Australia Council for the Arts research has also kind of confirmed how many arts audiences have access to the internet via mobile. Different patterns. iPads are changing behaviour of how people engage online. So at the top graph there shows you that there's a real peak at night after people get home from work. They're getting onto their iPads and they're starting to browse. And they're going to browse to your website, maybe, and how does it look on an iPad? And really interesting, 47% of smartphone users say they've ceased dealing with a brand completely as a direct result of its mobile service or app not being good enough. We can't hide our heads in the sand anymore. And if we do it well, consumers feel closer to us because they're carrying their mobile devices with them everywhere, wherever they go, on holiday, on the bus, at work, etc. So they feel more connected to us. Interesting data on why people are using the internet on their smartphone. So the most common reason is to pass time while they're waiting. This is New Zealand data. very recent data. And the next one is to get information. The next two are around relevant information, actually. So people are wanting information. And so arts organisations all over the world are starting to respond to this trend. So whether they're developing iPhone apps or, these are iPhone apps, and then this is a really interesting app that was created for the Sydney Festival by Stuart Buchanan's company. He's coming out to the Creative New Zealand conference this month. And he's been making the most of mobile's ability to share content, inviting people. This enables people at the festival to take photos and then share them with others. Museums are really getting into using, delivering services through mobile. So over 50% either are currently using mobile or plan to. And MoMA is a great example of that. So, you know, it's as this quote says from the creative director of digital at MoMA, mobile strategy is constantly evolving, and this is a world which is fast and fluid. We have to acknowledge it and move with it. So, you know, do we now still picture our audience members sitting at their desk looking at our website through their desktop computer? We no longer can, and it's having a huge impact. So I'm now going to hand over to Square, who's going to talk about, well, what do we do about this? How do we deliver content and services through mobile to our audiences?
Hi, everyone. So as Vicki said, this section is going to be looking at how we can deliver a good or great mobile experience to our audiences and potential audiences. So firstly, there are two key ways for content to be delivered to mobile devices. One is via applications or apps, and the other is through websites. So we're just going to look into what these different two different ways mean, really. So mobile apps are applications that you download onto your mobile device. You purchase it from, you know, the Android marketplace or the Apple App Store. These apps can work online, offline, or both. And the key thing to remember about these apps is that they are usually designed for specific platforms and or devices. So there's three types of apps. One being the native mobile app, which is sort of things that you download from those marketplaces. Another type is what we call web apps, and they are apps that mostly function online. And the third is the hybrid app. So as I said, a native app is one that is specifically designed to run on a device's operating system. And typically, it needs to be adapted for different devices. So here are some examples of purely native mobile apps. Some of you may use these already on a regular basis. So the difference with a web app is that it is a browser application. When you use it, it connects to the internet to download parts of the software and content. The great thing about a web app is it's cross-platform and usually accessible from all web-capable mobile devices. And here you have, again, some examples of web apps. So the YouTube app is a great example of it, where you basically log on and you go to YouTube, but it's a completely different way of using YouTube if you compare it to your desktop application or your desktop web browser. Now the third form is a hybrid app, and this is a combination of a native app and web technology. So it's got all the benefits of native apps, which we'll discuss a little bit more in a couple of slides. And the great thing about this is what it does is it wraps web technology so that you can still access web functions. And here we have some examples of it, the Facebook app being probably one of the most popular and famous ones. So in terms of mobile websites, you can generally think of mobile websites as divided into three types. So there's mobile friendly, there's mobile optimized, and there's what's called responsive websites. Mobile websites function basically just like any standard website. The only differences are that they're usually optimized for smaller screens. So on an iPhone, you can have a look at it, and if it is optimized, you'll see that it presents itself quite differently. The other thing about mobile websites is that there is ability to tap into specific functions that are only available to mobile devices. So, for example, if you ever logged on to a website and you see a telephone number there on your iPhone or Android phone, you might be able to literally click on the numbers and then make a phone call from that. So, in my view, there's there's a difference between mobile-friendly and mobile-optimized apps. So mobile-friendly apps are basically, mobile-friendly websites are basically websites that are just written with a potential mobile audience in mind. They are not optimized for the mobile audiences. So just to give you a visual example of this, we'll have a look at this. So to your left, there's what's called a mobile-friendly website, and then to your right, a mobile-optimized website. The Wikipedia app, for example, is a mobile-optimized website, where if you log on to it, you'll see that the menu and navigation is quite different from how it looks, again, on a desktop browser. So some of you might have heard of a new development in web design, which is called responsive web design. Personally, I think it's a great way forward. It's basically an approach that will allow designers and developers to respond fluidly and dynamically to a user's behavior and environment. So, for example, if I'm looking at a responsive website on a desktop browser, it presents itself in a certain way. But then if I look at the same website again through an iPhone, it automatically reformats itself so that it displays in a really legible and suitable manner. And likewise, if I look at it on an iPad or another different smart device, it will again respond differently. What this does is it eliminates sort of an age-old problem of web design, which is what screen size, for example, do you develop for? In years past, you sort of develop for a certain fixed size, but as technology progresses and new devices come on, we're finding that we've got very different screen sizes and user interfaces. And what this does is it basically plugs a gap in all the design differences. So we've sort of had a quick look at what an app or a mobile website is. And the key thing here to remember, I think, is that there's no right approach. There's no single right approach. So if you Googled mobile apps versus mobile websites, for example, you get lots and lots of content, lots of debates online about which is better. In my view, I think the key things for an organization to think about is, firstly, what is your target audience? By this I mean, does your website attract a significant amount of mobile visitors? And if it does, what to the organization is considered significant? And then once if you've decided that your website does have quite a lot of mobile visitors and you like to cater for them, I think the next big question you need to ask yourselves is, what is the sort of user experience that you want to achieve? A native app, the experience on a native app and the experience on a mobile website is quite different, and we'll explore these in the table shortly. Other things to take into consideration is time, budget, what sort of resources you have access to. So this is a pretty clever table that shows you, based on US statistics, what users are using in terms of mobile browsers and apps, what they're doing through their smart devices, and you see that depending on the function, there's quite a different proportion. So another factor to consider, what sort of organization are you? What are you trying to achieve in delivering a mobile experience to your customers? Again, here's a easy visual representation. So you can see that the different types and the different formats have very different trade-offs. So what we have here over these next 3 or 4 slides is a breakdown and analysis of different characteristics between native apps, web apps, and mobile websites. I won't go through these in detail. But generally speaking, the key categories and the key things to think about are things like compatibility. So with native apps, as I said before, it has to be customized to the device or platform. By that I mean, different phones, different operating systems will need different software. Whereas with a web application or mobile website, you circumvent that problem. Other factors to consider are things like implementation. Do you need to download and install a program? Is that going to be easier, or is it going to be easier for you just to log onto a website, have a look at it? Do you need a live internet connection to use to experience what the offering is? Development cost is probably a big deal. Generally speaking, native apps will cost more than delivering a web application or or mobile optimized or responsive website. The only thing to be careful here is with web apps, because of the recent developments in technology, we're finding that we can do more and more with web apps, and therefore development costs are also increasing. So it may be that your initial development cost for a native app and a web app is quite comparable, but where you potentially have cost savings is in terms of ongoing development costs. Another thing to point out perhaps the difference between native app and web apps and mobile websites is that an app that is installed on your phone allows you to use other functions of your phone. For example, GPS locations, using the camera, the microphone, calendar functions. This is not achievable via a straight and simple straightforward mobile or responsive website. However, we're seeing very clever people doing new great things with web apps now that have the ability to tap into some of the phone hardware functionalities. My guess is as we go along in time, we'll see more and more of this happening. So user experience, as I said, is something important to think about. Generally speaking, a native app will be more robust in terms of user experiences. It's great for interactive features and functions. If you're developing a game, for example, then that's probably where you need to head towards. However, there has been great increase in web apps abilities and functions, so that I think at some stage in the future we might see web applications do things quite similar to native apps. So that's I'll just leave you here with this quote. Mobile apps currently have better usability than mobile sites, but forthcoming changes will eventually make a mobile site a superior strategy. Now, my view is that this is absolutely correct, and I think in the next 2 or 3 years we'll see a trend towards more and more web applications and more focus on mobile optimized websites. So, Vicki, I'll hand this back to you now.
Great. Thank you very much, Square. That's really intriguing, actually, and it's really great to get that clarification around the difference between the apps and the mobile websites, and also how they break down into categories within each one too. And also, I think that table is a really useful resource that Square's pulled together for everyone, that later on when you've got access to the slides in the next couple of days, you can have a good look through it and sort of align it with your organisation's goals, and I'll come a little bit to that in the last section around strategy. So we just wanted to break at this point because that's a lot of information, and I'm pretty sure some of you will have some questions of Square about this section. If you do, we'll just stop now for some questions. Has anyone got any questions? You don't have to ask your question in the text box, but you can just put up your hand. So just let us know. No questions yet? Maybe you're all just sort of absolutely astounded by all this, all the statistics and all the information. You're just taking it in. So what we can do is come back to questions at the end. We've got time at the end for that. So what I want to do now is give you some insights into the analytics tools that you probably have at your fingertips in order to assess who your mobile audience currently is. Sorry, Sabrina. Oh, yep, there we go. Great. who your mobile audience currently is and how they're behaving, because sometimes we don't quite realise what we've got right in front of us with Google Analytics. So I'm going to give you a few of the specific reports that you can go back to your desk and run if you have Google Analytics. And it's a great way to check out what's happening currently and get a kind of a feeling for your current mobile audience. So the analytics that we typically have available to us through Google Analytics, Facebook Insights, YouTube Insights, etc., can tell us a number of things. So the first thing they can tell us, obviously, is the number and percentage of mobile visits. So that statistic I gave you earlier on around the stuff we're pulling out for Optimizer, that's around the percentage of mobile visits, or mobile visits, sorry, as a percentage of your total website visits. And that's the figure that we're seeing really growing, the proportion really growing, going from around 3% to 10% in the last year. So you can kind of see that growth. And you can look at that, depending on how long you've had Google Analytics installed, you can look at that, compare to past and see the growth. The second thing you can see is the mobile devices and operating systems being used by your visitors currently. And then also the traffic sources of mobile visitors. So of those who are coming via mobile, where are they actually coming from? Another very interesting thing to know about is the behaviour of your mobile visitors versus your non-mobile visitors. So typically what happens when you go into this data is you start to see that your mobile visitors are not engaging as deeply with your website, so they're dropping off quicker. They're not viewing as many pages. That type of thing. And the bigger the difference between your standard visitors and your mobile visitors, the more indication there is that your website is not performing well on mobile, so they're having a poor experience and dropping off. Another thing that's important is looking at your business goals that you've set up in Google Analytics for your website, such as conversion to email, conversion to purchase, whatever it is you're tracking on your website, actually seeing how mobile visits are converting to that as well, because that's an important part of your business strategy. If people are as likely to be looking at your website on a mobile device as they are on a desktop PC, and you're wanting them to do things like, convert to a ticket sale or sign up for your mailing list, you want to make sure that that process is intuitive and easy for them from wherever they are. And the last thing is looking, it's easy to sort of think, okay, mobile's another channel. But when you think about it, even if you haven't done anything about mobile yet and you haven't optimized your website for mobile, actually you are already delivering your content via mobile, because if you have a Facebook page or a YouTube channel, people are most likely to be looking at that on mobile as they are through any other means. So you're actually already delivering your content via mobile. So there's some interesting reports that kind of give you an indication of the crossover. So I'm just going to take you through some of these reports, and then when you get the slides later, you can you've got this visual indication to match them to your own Google Analytics reports, and you can go in and give this a try yourself. So the first most simple report is when you go into the standard reports in Google Analytics, you'll see the standard, you'll see the audiences report and reports, and under that is mobile. And the first you can go in and have a look at is the mobile overview. And this is where you're going to see down below in the table the comparison between your mobile visitors versus your non-mobile visitors. And typically, unless you've got a mobile site that you're tracking, typically your mobile visitors will be quite low. Anything from kind of 5 to 15% we're finding is typical at the moment. So this is a report I ran where I went into the audience overview report, which basically is the visits overview. And I went into, if you go into advanced segments, which is a tab that you have an option to go into, and you'll see that there's some preset segments, default segments that Google Analytics has, and one of them is mobile traffic, another one is all visits. What you do is check the mobile traffic segment and apply that, and then what I did was I compared it to 1 year prior, And this is where you start to see this amazing growth. So the orange line is the mobile traffic from a year ago, and then the blue line is the mobile traffic from this year. So this is a really interesting way to see how quickly your growth has gone. You can then go also into the mobile device report, which is another standard report, and this will show you the devices, smartphones and tablets being used by your current mobile website visitors. So this can be really interesting in terms of starting to assess what your priority should be. It's always a bit of a chicken and egg situation. Are they only coming via these devices because you have an app on these devices versus not on the others and that type of thing. But generally, it's giving you a strong indication of what your audience is using in terms of mobile. So it's really useful. And then you can drill down by selecting a secondary dimension. If I click on I've got this little pointer here. I'm going to try it for the first time. There we go. That secondary dimension you can change to operating system, and then it drills down a little further into the actual operating system of the device. So you can actually play around with that secondary dimension and see how much you can drill down into more information. This can be really useful for your developers as well, talking to them about where you go next with mobile. So in terms of the source of your mobile traffic, I've just blocked out I've erased a couple of things in this report so you couldn't see the detail, but basically what you do is go into the mobile overview report, and what I did was selected secondary dimension source, and then it shows you in decreasing order where your traffic is, the most common traffic sources for your site, and then it says whether they're mobile or not. So you can see it's actually distinguishing between Google traffic that's come from a standard PC through versus Google traffic that's come from a mobile device. So this can be really interesting to find out how people are getting to your site via mobile devices. Going back into the audience overview report, this is a way to compare engagement from your mobile traffic versus engagement from people coming through the standard route. So if you go and tick advanced segment, both advanced segments, all visits and mobile traffic, it then does a comparison, and scroll down and you'll get these engagement kind of stats. So this is showing you the pages per visit, the average visit duration, and the bounce rate, which is the number of people who stay. Simply put, it's the number of people who stay on one page and then leave. So immediately you can see that with this particular site, the engagement is not as strong on the mobile sites, on the mobile devices as it is through the standard computer. But it's not too bad. Sometimes you see a much bigger variation. So if it was really a strong gap between the two, as I mentioned before, that's really indicating that you've got to do something about it to address it quickly. It's not just Google Analytics. You can go into your Facebook Insights now, and if you go into likes, you can see the sources of likes, and you can see how many are coming via mobile. And likewise in YouTube Insights, it does indicate how much of your traffic to your YouTube channel came from mobile apps. And what's quite interesting here is this report is on an individual video. So you can go into the statistics of the individual video, and they have this great report that shows you kind of the events as people discovered your video. And so it will show you when was the first view from a mobile device. So as you can see, there's a lot of stuff available to you already, which I do recommend as you're starting to sort of assess where you're at, that you go in and start to look at and watch. And the optimizer results, as they start to come out, will start to show you where you track against the rest of the sector. So we've already had a few interesting surprises come out, but more on that at the conference. So just moving on to where you get started. So you've had a lot of information today, which I'm sure you'll want to kind of digest. Where do you begin in planning a mobile strategy? Everyone who's anyone is now saying you have to have a mobile strategy. 2012 is a year that you can't have your head in the sand anymore. You have to think about how you're going to deliver your digital content and digital channels through mobile. So, you know, where do you even begin? And here's the Google Director of Mobile and Social Advertising Strategy talking about this as well. Where do you begin? So, anyone who knows me and has worked with me knows that I'm all about strategy, stepping back and going, but why? Why do I want to do this? And so this is what I encourage with mobile as much as anything. So a typical tactical approach that I hear a lot of going on in arts organisations is we need a cool app. And the reason is often that we want to show our audiences that we're forward-thinking. We feel like we're being left behind because, you know, this organisation who's complementary to us or similar to us has an app and it's really cool, and we need to have one too. And that's just the wrong way to go about things. What you really want to do is stand back and say what sort, pardon me for the typo, what sort of mobile experience do we need to deliver to achieve our core organisational objectives? And I think a lot of the stuff that Square presented earlier is you have to stop and think about your target audience and what you want to deliver to them, what is the experience they need to have. Do a lot of that thinking first. So I've created 10 questions to ask when developing a mobile strategy that I hope are useful to you. And the first one is, who is coming to our digital channels currently via mobile, and what sort of experience are they having? And what I mean by that is just the sort of stuff I've just taken you through, the sort of insights that those reports are giving you. When I say what sort of experience they're having, okay, you don't know them personally. Your Google Analytics stats are giving you sort of general trends, but what it's showing you is that they're either having, you know, they may be having a bad experience because they're dropping off quickly when they come via mobile and they're not engaging and they're not converting to business goals. So that's the first step, I think. You'll gain quite a few insights and it will start you thinking, and it might get you quite inspired to move in this area. The second is to understand your current audiences and how they use mobile and what they would like you to deliver. So this is just simply research. How you conduct that research is up to you, but it's about going out and asking them, what devices are they using, how do they use mobile, and how would they like to engage with you via mobile? And then think about, once you've got that information, what you are trying to achieve via your mobile channel. How is it going to support your overall organisational, marketing and digital goals? Who are you targeting? Square talked earlier about the target audiences. You really need to think about who it is you're aiming to reach via mobile and what they're wanting from you via mobile. So it's not going to be necessarily every single segment in your audience, but you really need to have an idea of which groups you're targeting through this channel. And then you get to the point, only then really do you get to the point of what functionality, content and services you should be delivering to them. And that's less about the technology, that's what do they need to have when they're on their mobile device and they're engaging with you. What are they expecting to have? Is it just simply all about information delivery? You saw those stats earlier about why people are using the internet on their mobile phone. A lot of it, they just want information. Or are you the type of organisation that needs to engage more deeply, like the Sydney Festival that wanted people to take photos of their experience at the festival and share them around with people? So it's really like, what do you need to deliver to them? Because that's going to help determine, if you go through Square's table, what is the solution. And so this is when you get to the solution, which is which channels and technology can best deliver this for you. And then you're at the point of, okay, you've got to explore options and costs, and that might be a matter of moving to number 8. Is it your current web provider? Are you going to use, you know, various services that are available? You're going to have to do a little bit of desk research and talking to your peers and asking other organisations internationally what they've done and who they've used and things like that. The other thing to think about is not to think of it all in isolation, but think about your other digital channels. It's not just your website. Are they optimised for mobile? So if you're not using a proper email management system or email service provider, you may have issues with how your email is delivered on mobile. And as you can see from those statistics, it is just as likely that someone's looking at email through their mobile device than on their computer, potentially. So make sure that your email service provider, and if you're using something like MailChimp, they're kind of updating this sort of stuff all the time. They're very aware of all that, and they're optimizing stuff for mobile. But just make sure that your emails are able to be viewed and look attractive and things on a mobile device. And lastly, you really need to think about how you're going to monitor your progress and measure the outcomes, and I've given you a whole lot of reports already. That's not even with developing custom reports, which you can do in Google Analytics. That's just the basic standard reports and using the segmentation tools available to you. So think about what you can measure from my list earlier, and just think how that's going to tell you whether you've reached your outcomes or not. This is an excerpt from the Tate Gallery's online strategy, which I thought was interesting. So this is one of their principles. The strategy was actually written a couple of years ago, but it's a 3-year strategy. And one of them was that content and interaction should be taken to the online audience. And what I thought was interesting is that they had identified that through new mobile platforms, they can reach new audiences and interact with them in the spaces where they are active. So they were already identifying 2 years ago that they could get to people where they were by focusing on mobile platforms and devices. Just unfortunately, Michael Adams couldn't be with us today, but he is one of the coaching participants of the Optimised Coaching Program, and he agreed that I could share some information about their project, which I thought you might just find interesting. They decided to focus on becoming mobile optimised. Now, this is a long-term strategy, but in the short term, they're starting to develop a mobile optimised website to kind of trial it out and see how people respond to it. And from that experience, which is the first part of the project, which is happening this year, they will gain insights and data to help them sort of develop their strategy further. So I thought you might just be interested to hear some of the thinking behind this. This is the kind of core driver for the project. They want to respond to changes in consumer behaviour and expectation, which I thought was really great that Michael had identified that people's expectations are changing in terms of how they engage. So they wanted to respond to this and amongst their core subscription and public audiences.
Sorry to interrupt, Vicki, but we've just had a question. I wonder if you might be able to...
sorry. Okay, thanks for that question, Pen. I'll just come back to that in a second. I'll get Square to probably answer that. Might be a bit mean for that, Square, but I'll let you think about that while I just finish up here. Is that okay, Jackie? We'll come back to that. Okay, so the desired outcomes that they want is to have an additional sales channel. They're seeing it as an additional sales channel, better customer experience, meeting their customer expectations, improving accessibility and potentially reaching new audiences because of that, and being in an informed position. So once they've run the first part of the project, they'll have more data and understanding of their audience's use of mobile in order to be able to plan the next phase. And they're targeting their potential ticket buying audience, their typical segments who own a smartphone or a tablet. And they've got 3 kind of key strands of their project, which is developing the M site, looking at other mobile opportunities. Sometimes we forget that there's a lot of potential opportunities for us to deliver information via mobile through other organisations' apps, or perhaps their citywide apps, like an Auckland app or a Wellington app. Maybe they're apps created by your sponsors, just being creative and doing some desk research around what apps are out there and how you could get your information on them. And the other is just audience research that they're doing to find out some of the things I talked about earlier, and also delving into their analytics and watching them as they go. So this is the first prototype of their mobile app, which is coming soon. So you can all watch out for that. You'll hear about it through the program. The latest Journal of Arts Marketing from the Arts Marketing Association in the UK was completely focused on mobile. That's how important it is, and as Heather Maitland said earlier, every cultural organisation needs a mobile strategy now. Everyone's saying this now. So just to quickly refresh what we've done this morning. We talked about the trends. I'm hoping also, I did bombard you with statistics, but kind of deliberately, because a lot of people ask me if I've got some great evidence and stats about the use of mobile. So now you've got a whole lot up your sleeve and in your armory to provide evidence. Square went through delivering a mobile experience with different options for doing that. I then talked about the different reporting that gives you insights into your current mobile usage, and then we talked about a few planning tips and being strategic. So we will start with, are you there, Square? Can you?
I am.
Yeah. I don't know if it is difficult to answer this question of Pens about typical costs, but do you have any thoughts?
Thanks, Ken, for your question. It's a great question, a very practical question. You're absolutely right in that it's going to be quite difficult to say, but certain things can be, we can sort of look at different things here. So let's start with optimizing a website. Assuming you work with a decent web developer or creative agency, optimizing a website for mobile delivery could range anything between sort of 5,000 to, I've seen as much as 30,000 for a small piece of work in terms of doing that. And a lot of that really depends on how sophisticated your website is already, is currently set up to be. But hopefully that gives you a bit of a ballpark. But in terms of developing apps, I'll just bring you back to one of the slides earlier, Vicki, if that's all right.
Yeah. You want me
so
to? Yep.
In terms of development costs, the thing about developing for native apps is that you have to take into account the fact that there are different operating systems and there are different devices. Here's a staggering little factoid. We sort of think of smart devices as primarily being Apple devices, iOS-based devices, iPhones, iPads, etc. But in reality, the current most popular smart device is actually Android-based, which is a Google platform. So if you're developing a native app, you're almost certain to want to develop for at least 2 to 3 different major operating systems, that being Android, the Apple platform iOS, as well as Windows Phone. So immediately there's triple the cost because you have to create 3 sets of code, or rather customize a set of code to fit on 3 different devices. Now, and how long is a piece of string? Because at the moment there are 15 different mobile operating systems available to users. So it's a very complicated question. And I think it would be really, really difficult to try and pinpoint what sort of a basic cost for an app would be. But you're definitely looking into the sort of high 4 figures to sort of low to mid 5-figure range is what I'm thinking. I think Vicki's questions earlier were the checklists, the 10 questions. Those are great questions because, and the thing I'll encourage all of you to think about when deciding whether to go with an app or a website is to discuss it quite thoroughly with your developer, and also do, as Vicki suggested earlier, lots of research. There's an amazing amount of information available online. I don't think you find sort of typically providers or suppliers listing their development costs, but most of them will offer you a free quote, a free consultation. So, take a bit of time, have a chat to them, and try and have a see what sort of ballparks you'll be working in. Pen, hopefully that's answered your question.
I can also add something in that probably 3 or 4 organisations I've been involved with over the last couple of years have spent between about 5,000 and 10,000 New Zealand dollars for an iPhone app or a mobile site. So it seems that, and that would be a fairly basic iPhone app, and that's only one platform. So that's just another ballpark to throw in terms of my experience.
And Vicki, I might just add one other thing as well, which is that when developing a native app, a big thing to think about is ongoing costs. Because take, for example, you've created, say you're a festival, and you've created an app for this year's festival, and you want to update it for next year, you're going to have to expend, a certain amount of money again to upgrade that software. So the ongoing maintenance cost, in terms of how much it's going to cost your organization, almost invariably going with a mobile website or a web application will be a cheaper option in terms of long term than going with a native app. So.
Thanks, Square. Just something interesting, when I was looking at the MoMA case study, they actually sort of rolled out one at a time. They started with an iPhone app, and then they went to Android, and then they went to iPad, so they kind of did it in a phased strategy. The other thing to say is, to support what Square was saying, I know of one festival in particular that had an app one year and spent $7,000 to $8,000 for it, on the understanding that it wouldn't cost very much to update it the following year, and the following year it was going to cost the same again, and so they decided to pull the app. So, and the other thing that's something I heard about apps is that, I don't have the exact numbers, but I do understand that it's one thing to get someone to download an app, but it's another thing to get them to continually use it. So what happens is, often people will invest money in an app, people will download it, and then because it's not updating regularly or, providing new and relevant information, people kind of lose interest in the app. We've all got apps sitting on our phones that we don't reopen. So it's one thing to create the app, it's another to maintain it in a level that's going to keep people engaged.
Yep.
There's another question. Oh, sorry, go Square.
No, I was just going to say that's absolutely right. The life cycle of an app versus a mobile website or a web application, native app pales in comparison to the alternatives. I'll just, Matthew, you've got a comment there about a stat saying that 80% of mobile visits are done from fast connections, such as Wi-Fi networks. This is quite true. Speed is definitely a factor in terms of running mobile websites. So in terms of delivering content, as I said earlier, you can be much more robust in terms of delivering content to native apps. But with anything that requires a live internet connection, you're kind of beholden to the bandwidth and also the sort of technology available to you. So, generally speaking, mobile optimized websites are part-back versions of their full website. They have, they load quicker. They should load quicker, rather, and the way you use it will be quite significantly different from a typical sort of desktop website.
There's another question here from Steve Thomas about audiences being rural and remote. Is there any view on mobile usage between town and country? Any comments on that, Square?
Any view on mobile usage between town and country? In New Zealand, our sort of mobile broadband speeds aren't the best. In fact, our landed broadband speeds aren't the best either. With fiber rolling out now, things are changing very quickly. So any of you who own a new iPad will know that it's capable for new Wi-Fi technologies and also new mobile broadband technologies. So these things are constantly being developed and updated. There's a sort of rule of law that says that internet speeds will increase by sort of tenfold within a number of years. I think as we go along, we will see progress in terms of restrictions on technology and things like that, and that will definitely have an impact on usage. But I don't know if there is any clear statistics showing the differences in terms of mobile usage between rural and remote. Hope that's helpful, Vicki.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Probably have time for one quick last question if anyone's got one. Otherwise, we'll call it a day, and you can certainly take your time going through the resources when they get put up online in the next couple of days. And also, Square and I are always happy to answer questions. Our contact details are on the PowerPoint. So I might... we just had a comment from Vicki Smith. Hi, Vicki. I'm just going to read this out. With Upstage, we try to optimize for rural right back at dial-up stage, including rural doesn't exclude urban users. and especially in an online environment, means your entire audience can access your work.
That's very clever to do so, because you know, there will be a certain proportion of people using dial-up, and as I said earlier, generally speaking, mobile optimized websites should take into account page load speeds and things like that. And again, I keep coming back to the fact that the internet has many great resources. For example, you can test, you can simulate how your website might look on an iPad or an iPhone using certain tools. If you want more information about that, please just contact me and I'll send you some links. But on top of that, you can also run these tests on your websites to see how well it'll function on a mobile device. So basically, it's kind of like a little health checkup for your website. To see, you know, things like page load speeds, you know, coding compatibility and things like that. So it's worth it's a good exercise to do, and it'll only take a few minutes. So
that's great. Thanks, Square, and thanks, Vicki, for your comment as well. So I might just hand back quickly to Jackie to wrap up.
That's great. Thanks so much, Vicki and Square. That was really fantastic, and actually really great to have the latest statistics on the, you know, exponential increase in mobile use, and really insightful presentation. So thank you so much for that. The rest of you will be aware that it's been recorded, and that will be available soon on the website, as well as Vicki's PowerPoint. And as she said, if you've got any questions, please do follow up. There'll also be a short survey at the end, and would really appreciate if you could fill it out and give us any feedback just about how useful you've found any feedback we can get about how useful you found the webinars would be fantastic. So just want to thank you very much for your participation, and just also a reminder that the next webinar, Developing an e-newsletter that Works, is actually on a Thursday. We've changed the date from a Wednesday to a Thursday, so that's the 28th of June, and we really look forward to talking to you all then. Take care.
Thank you, Jackie. Thanks, everyone.